When you think of Martin Luther, you probably picture the historical figure, right? The monk who nailed his theses to a church door and basically changed the course of Western history. But that's not what we're digging into today. We're going to look past the man and deconstruct the powerful, radical, and often really misunderstood theological engine that drove him. And it all kicks off with one single, terrifying question.
For Luther, everything, and I mean everything, boiled down to this. This wasn't some abstract philosophical puzzle for him. No, this was a deeply personal, soul-crushing problem. It's the question that sits at the very heart of his entire worldview. And to get a handle on Luther, you have to understand why this question absolutely consumed him.
So before Luther got to his answer, he first had to go down all the usual roads. You know, the places everyone tells you to look for God. He looked in nature, he looked in history, and he tried to use human reason. And for Luther, every single one of them turned out to be a dead end.
Okay, first up, nature. I mean, this seems like a no-brainer, right? Can't we just look at the unbelievable beauty of a sunset, the stars in the sky, or the miracle of life itself and figure out the God who made it all? It seems obvious.
But for Luther, the answer was a hard no. He argued that without faith already in your heart, all of nature's wonders are totally meaningless. You see them, but you don't get them. He had this really blunt way of putting it. A person without faith looks at creation like a cow staring at a new door. There's just no recognition, no real understanding. For him, nature only reveals God to those to whom God has already decided to reveal himself.
All right, so if nature is a closed book, what about history? Surely we can look at the grand sweep of human events, the rise and fall of these massive empires, and see a clear, divine plan working itself out.
And again, Luther says nope. History is just as much of a mess. It looks like this chaotic puppet show where God lets these arrogant empires strut around on stage for a while before he just knocks them down. But worse, it often seems totally unjust. The good guys suffer, the wicked prosper, and God seems completely hidden, or even indifferent. History doesn't reveal a clear, benevolent plan. For Luther, it just reveals chaos and paradox.
And that brings us to the third dead end, human reason. For Luther, our logic, our philosophy, it's completely useless for understanding God because divine logic is on another planet. Human logic says 2 + 5 is 7, but divine logic, if God says it's 8, you believe it. We think God should be recognizable, benevolent, but Luther says before he can be God, he must first appear to be the devil. Think about that. God works through opposites, through contraries, and our little human brains just can't compute that. So, if nature is a bust, history is a mess, and our own reason fails us, where in the world do you turn? For Luther, this is where the search screeches to a halt. There is only one place where God has decided to make himself known, one and only one foundation you can actually build your life on: Jesus Christ.
See, for Luther, Christ isn't just one part of the story. He is the master key that unlocks absolutely everything. Through him, and only him, can you understand the true heart of God, the real nature of sin and death, and even how you're supposed to live in this confusing world. Without Christ, you're just fumbling around in total darkness.
But even this isn't straightforward. Believing in Christ means you have to embrace paradox. Luther calls him a strange king. In order to save you, he first has to make you feel like a desperate sinner. To make you wise, he first has to show you that you're a complete fool. It's a faith that just constantly turns our expectations on their head.
So how does this faith even happen? It happens through what Luther called the Word. Now this is critical. The Word for him isn't just the Bible as a book sitting on a shelf. It's the living, active, proclaimed voice of God. It's something you hear and experience, especially through preaching and the sacraments. It's the delivery system for the gift of faith. And once that faith lands, man, it completely rewrites the entire rulebook on morality.
Now you can probably see where this is going. This whole faith alone thing led to what a lot of people back then, and even now, saw as its most dangerous part: a direct threat to morality itself. It immediately brings up a really unsettling question.
This is the classic objection. And look, it's a totally fair question. If your good deeds don't earn you any points with God, if salvation is a completely free gift, doesn't that just give everyone a license to sin as much as they want? Why bother being good at all?
And Luther, he didn't shy away from this. He basically ran right at the controversy with statements like this one. Just let that sink in for a second. All your efforts to be a good person, your charity, your kindness, your integrity, if they're done without faith, Luther calls them damnable sins. I mean, he's being intentionally shocking here.
But okay, here's the crucial context, and it's a really important one.
The problem isn't the action itself, it's the motive. Luther's point is that the moment you use your good works as a kind of bargaining chip, the moment you try to use them to justify yourself before God, to prove you're worthy of being saved, they become selfish. They're all about you. And at that point, they are no longer truly good.
So Luther just flips the whole script on traditional morality. He says good works don't make a good man, but a good man does good works. See, we tend to think that by doing a bunch of good things, we make ourselves into a good person. Luther says it's the exact opposite. First, through faith, God makes you a good person, then good works just naturally flow from who you have now become. They're the fruit, not the root.
So what does this new morality actually look like in practice? If it's not about trying to earn salvation, what's the point? Well, this is where Luther's ethic gets incredibly positive, but also really, really demanding.
To get this idea across, Luther uses this incredible image. He says faith isn't just believing in something, it's a union with Christ. Your soul, he says, is like a piece of iron that you plunge into a fire. It takes on the very qualities of that fire. It becomes fire red. Goodness is no longer a chore you have to do, it's just your new nature. So this whole moral journey, you can kind of break it down into 4 steps. It all starts with total humility. You give up any claim to being righteous on your own. Then comes acceptance. Your salvation is a gift. It's completely outside of you. From there, good works are no longer an obligation, not a checklist. They become this overflowing of pure gratitude. And all of this culminates in the final, just breathtaking step, the decision to give yourself as a sort of Christ to your neighbor. At the end of the day, the thing Luther really couldn't stand was a morality that was just focused on personal purity, on keeping your own record clean, your own nose clean. He saw that as a fundamentally selfish goal. For him, the real goal of the Christian life is to turn completely outward and serve the person right next to you. And this leads us to his most radical and honestly most difficult ethical command. He says a Christian must be so identified with their neighbor that they actually take on the sins of others, not just helping them from a distance, but sharing in their brokenness. This isn't about keeping a safe distance. It's about deep, messy, costly empathy. And that leaves us with a pretty profound question. In our world, which is so focused on self-care and personal boundaries, what could it possibly mean for us to take on the sins of others today?